So now I have an amazing new partner on this show. She's going to be my guest today, Jennifer Mowdy, who created and runs and owns the literary cat company Bookstore and Cat Lounge. But you will also find us on Cat Chat. We are going to be discussing all kinds of cat themed, mostly fiction, although we might do some nonfiction. So you got to stay tuned both places. This woman knows books, and boy, does she know cats. And I've been looking for someone to have these conversations with, especially Jennifer, around Japanese novels. There was a whole article months ago about, oh, there's this big raft of Japanese novelists writing about cats. I thought, cool. And I asked the publisher for review copies and I read them and I thought, this is interesting. Could I interview the author? No, they don't speak English. Could I interview the translator? No, that neither do they, not comfortably. I thought, okay, I'll find somebody. Jennifer Mowdy. It's so great to meet you. So I read a big fat article about you. I don't know if it was the Washington Post or the New York Times. This creation of yours in nowhere-ish mid-America, right? I don't mean that rudely, but anybody who has an independent bookstore in a place that isn't a major city where most independent bookstores have already closed is a very brave pioneer. So I just want to take my hat off to you for that.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Tell me how you got the guts to do this.
Oh, goodness. So I was a teacher for 17 years, taught elementary school, and I also taught ESL, English as a Second Language.
Oh,
And I loved my teaching career. But then COVID hit and everything changed. And I was really burned out. And I was teaching ESL at the time, and teaching ESL during COVID was going to be a nightmare. And I just knew that this was the time in my life where I was meant to do something else. So I made the hardest decision ever, and I left my teaching career, and I was just mourning and grieving not being a teacher anymore and trying to figure out what to do with the next half of my life. And I just always had this thing in the back of my head that I wanted to try, but I didn't quite know how to do it. I just thought if I could bring together my two passions, books and literacy education, along with rescuing cats, what would that look like? And cat cafes were popping up everywhere, and I didn't want to do the typical cat cafe. I wanted it to be a bookstore. So I just researched and planned and organized and dove deep into my courage and decided to take a big giant risk. And so far, it's worked out wonderfully.
well, that's remarkable. There are so few people anywhere that can start a bookstore, but you think that you'd want it in a neighborhood where people have foot traffic and they're bored with their children on the weekend. I don't know, let's go sit in the bookstore and read all the really cool books that Jennifer's put together. But you're in Pittsburg, Kansas. Now, in the article that in which you were quoted, you said, "We're a poor community." And I thought, even rich communities can't afford independent bookstores. I know that sounds odd. They can't afford it because are people going to go into a bookstore, browse the titles that you have carefully curated, and then buy the book? Question mark, question mark.
Right.
And you are in this less than affluent area, off the beaten track. It's certainly not Kansas City. Is that where you live? And you thought, heck, I'm going to do it near home. I'm not going to travel to an urban area. Is that why you chose it?
That's exactly it. And through my years of teaching, I want to bring literacy to all communities. And because we are not an affluent community, that's all the more reason we need more bookstores.
Wow, such a counterintuitive thinking, and yet turns out you're right. That people that may not be affluent, and in some cases may not even have grown up speaking English, they want books. Books matter to people. I'm thrilled because I have spent the last 15 years on this show and on Cat Chat, always trying to have authors on. I may not even adore their book that might have to do with dogs or cats or other animals, but I want people to know it exists and let them find out for themselves. And
Yeah.
I guess that's your idea. You look for these books and then you put them in front of people and see how much of an appetite they have for it. It's kind of like a cat toy. You dangle it.
Exactly. You
And
dangle it in front of them and see what
yeah.
goes.
So the child part of your bookstore seems important. On your really nice website, there's a picture of a little kid in a pink puffa parka just cuddled up against a bookshelf with a book. Children seem to be a big part of the bookstore. Do cats help them want to be near a book? Do they want to be near a
Absolutely.
cat? It's that, right?
Absolutely. I always wanted to do this really cool thing when I was teaching. I wanted to take kids to the animal shelter and let them read books to cats. I thought that was
Oh,
just
nice.
coolest thing to do. And now I can do these
That's
cats
right.
are here and the kids can read books to them. And I have little kids come in all the time. And especially during the school year, they have their required 30 minutes of reading time at home that they have to do or whatever. And especially those that the parents have to push them to do that. They've told me that it makes it easier when they tell them, "Hey, let's go to the bookstore and you can read your do your reading time if you read to a cat." And they do that and it works.
That is so lovely. So let's just talk economics. So in they come with their grubby little fingers. I don't mean that rudely, but they're grubby little kid fingers. And they leaf through the books that you have there for sale. How much is just, are they treating you like a library, which you don't mind? You're a teacher. You
Right.
just want them to love books and read and maybe even at someday take home a cat. But economically, do people feel guilty? A guilty, not a guilty pleasure, but guilty that they're using your space and your lights and your Wi-Fi maybe and your books and then going home empty-handed?
We honestly don't have that happen all that often. There are people that do come in and they'll read for a while and they'll leave without purchasing anything, but I just let them know I hope that it comes back around. I hope that when they need a gift for somebody or when they need to buy a book, they're going to think of us. They're going to think of us letting them come in and just read and have some quiet time and some peaceful time so that when they are ready to make a purchase, they do come back to us. And it happens.
Nice. That's believing in good karma somehow makes it happen. But I
Right.
will say the part of that sentence that's interesting is when they need to buy a book for a gift. And my guess is that the Literary Cat Company has put people in a mindset that a book is a gift. I don't think that everyone even thinks of that anymore, whether it's
Yes.
for their grandchildren or their best friend, an adult book. I don't think that people necessarily think of books as gifts as giving a man a tie at Christmas. Not that many of them wear ties that much. There's something about books that seemed less sexy, less thoughtful, less special, but it's not. It's not great when somebody gives you a book and it was published like 4 years ago and they took it off their shelf, which is fine if they say, I want to share this book of mine with you. But buying a fresh book, you obviously have books that were published years ago because
Right.
you hope that books can stay around for years.
Yes.
What about the cats? What you have a partnership with a shelter. So you
Yes.
have brought the shelter to the Literary Cat Company. Talk
Yes.
about that partnership. When you said you had so much planning to do, people might think, did that mean building bookshelves? It really wasn't just that.
Oh, it's really we've combined two completely, totally separate industries. We've combined a bookstore with cat rescue, which is not all that easy to do. There's zoning and there's city regulations and there's state regulations that you have to take into account.
So what did you come up against in this endeavor?
We started off offering tea and coffee. So that was a whole other beast in itself because we had to follow certain city and state regulations about having the cats separated from the tea and coffee.
Goodness.
So we were able to do it, but it turned out it was just too much for one person to handle. I started off just completely by myself. So it's a hard thing for someone to work a coffee area plus sell books plus handle any cat things that are going on.
Right. And
Yeah.
encouraging both the sale of cats and
Yes,
books. Cats aren't really for
exactly.
sale, but still, it's a transaction, right?
Yes, it is. So that just got to be too much. Hopefully, we would love to be able to bring the coffee and tea back once we figure out a better way to do it. But even after I was able to hire my first employee, it was still just too much for two people to handle. So we did not get the whole coffee and tea going like we originally planned, but maybe one day we will.
What if somebody was to have a food truck type of thing, a coffee, tea, soda truck outside? Would you legally be allowed to let people bring
Yes.
in their drink?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we're
Idea for
situated,
somebody in Pittsburg, Kansas. Come on, guys. If
exactly.
Jennifer Mowdy could make a whole store and a cat rescue happen, you can bring your food truck there, and you've got a lot of good audience right there, right
That's
at the door.
right. And we're actually perfectly situated. We're right next to a little restaurant called the Corner Patio,
Oh,
right next door where I can just walk out the door and they're right there. So people all the time will go over there and get their coffee or they make these amazing smoothies and they'll go over there and get their drinks and they bring them over to where we are. And that's perfectly fine. We don't mind that at all. And the state does not frown upon that at all. We just let people know the cats can be jerks and they like straws in particular. So you just have to watch your beverage.
So that's one of the wall mottos. Watch
Yes,
your beverage.
watch your beverage.
All right, talk about the cat shelter that you chose to work with, or the animal shelter who gave you some of their cats.
Currently we're working with SEK Animal Advocates. They're a wonderful foster-based rescue slash shelter here in Pittsburg, Kansas. We work with them in the fact that when they get cats in that they think would be a good fit for our store, have a good personality for our store, then they let us know. And if we've got room, we take them in. So we're just a big foster home. We've figured out that our magic number is 10. If we have 10
What?
cats, then we're doing good. Any more than that gets to be a little bit of a handful. Less than that feels like we don't have very many cats. We do have three permanent bookstore kitties. They are permanent residents. They are the owners and managers of the store. They keep us all in check. So we always have those three. So then we like to take in seven others that can be adoptable. And we've had 37 adoptions since we've been open. And we've been open about a year and a half now.
That's a huge number for a location that is off the beaten track. And even though people know there's cats there, they aren't necessarily, that's not their mission. We hope their
Right,
mission is to buy a book and
right.
hang out with a cat, which is a great combination. But falling in love with one and taking one home would be wonderful. And the cats have already been spayed, neutered, vaccinated, microchipped, whatever is necessary for health. So they're ready to go to a new home,
Yes.
which takes the burden off. Imagine if you had to do that on top of
Right.
everything else. That would,
Well, the cats, they get socialized while they're here with us because there's
right.
so many people coming in all the time to pet them and play with them and snuggle up with them. They get socialized. And just think about cats that sit in cages and shelters and they don't get that chance and people don't get to see their true personality. Here they get to socialize and they get used to being a good cat. And we've had cats come in that were not at all adoptable. They were practically feral or they were extremely shy or withdrawn and elderly cats. I love taking in elderly cats and sometimes they'll just hide under the couches for several days. But then they eventually come out and they get used to people, and then suddenly they get an adoption application put in on them, which would not have happened if they were sitting in a cage in a shelter.
They might not have ever left the shelter out the front door, so to speak.
Exactly.
Isn't that an amazing feeling for you to be able to do that? I was very excited that Catit, the company that is one of the sponsors of Cat Chat with this really cool topper and treat called Creamy that they make, they
Mhm.
wanted to embrace what you were doing. They were very excited when they heard about it. And they're underwriting some adoptions and also giving you a lot of their very cool equipment and supplies. That's kind of marvelous, right?
It's been wonderful. They sponsored three adoptions, and we actually have three adoptions this week in the works right now that we're just ready
Wow.
to pull the trigger on and approve.
Isn't that something? How much does it cost to adopt a cat from the literary cat company?
Typically the adoption fee is 80. If they're a senior over the age of 7, then we discount them down to 60. And then sometimes we have really special breeds that will come in and we do a higher adoption fee because we want to make sure that they're going to a really good home that's not adopting them just because of the kind of cat they are. But typically
Oh,
80 is
that's
our adoption fee.
interesting. So if you had a Persian, let's say, or a Siamese, or a Scottish Fold, or whatever purebred cat might seem like it should have a higher price tag, you put the price tag because you want to deter them from taking the cat
Yes,
because they're a status symbol, if you will. I know they're not really a status symbol, but they
right,
have a fancier label on them. Is that
right.
right? You want them to take the everyday cats.
Yes, and we did. We just had a Siamese, and he was just a little street mutt. We have no idea if he was purebred or not, but he looked purebred. He was absolutely gorgeous. He was here for less than a week, and we had his adoption fee at 200,
Wow.
and his adopters did not blink an eye at paying that for him because they wanted him so badly.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
People really are drawn to what they see. And I think with cats, it's even more true because if they are little works of art, as they've often been referred to, then to some people, that work of art, when it looks a certain way, is more stunning to them, whether it's a
Yes.
Maine Coon or a Norwegian forest cat, or I'm sure you don't want too many of the super long-haired cats because then you have more vacuuming to do.
We do a lot of vacuuming.
I bet vacuuming, we need Bissell or somebody with a pet vacuum one. A lot of people, not people, but companies have them. It's wonderful. And now, what about dogs? Do you try to have books, a lot of books for adults or children that feature cats? And if so, are dogs are they second fiddle, or is that not really relevant to what you choose?
We do not discriminate against dogs and dog lovers and dog owners. We do have a wide range of cat related books. Anytime I see a cat book, when I'm searching for books to complete my order, I always put in as many cat books as I can find, but I also put in a fair amount of dog books too. We've got a little dog section as well. We don't discriminate.
That's so cute. So if people want something that's really species specific,
Yeah,
you've picked all those books for them. I should
yeah.
probably pick your brain. Maybe you have something on your cat or dog shelf that somehow I missed. I look forward to being able to discuss particularly the Japanese literature with you. And let's just talk about it broadly for a minute in case people listening to this show are not necessarily cat chat listeners, but I want them to know we're going to do a lot of cat literature on Cat Chat just because it is undervalued in our publishing world. You see a lot more dog books published, and certainly there might not be as many cat writers, but maybe there are. What do you think about this Japanese wave of books about cats in general? Are you surprised? Have you already seen this for a long time since you're such a book lover?
I haven't, but I knew that it was probably out there because the cat cafes originated in the Asian countries. And they're a huge trend over there. They're a big thing. And the Asian culture just really values their kitties. And I just thought surely there's lots of other avenues that cats can be showcased from the Asian countries besides just the cat cafes. And sure enough, like you said, there's just been a rash of books published about cats in these Japanese languages, and I think it's great. We've got lots of people that come into the store looking exactly for those.
Really, they've heard about them.
Yeah.
They want obviously the translation. Do you think that the writing is obviously originally in Japanese, but you probably have lots of translated books on the shelves sprinkled
Mhm.
amongst all of your books. Do you think that they have a certain gestalt about them? They seem to me to have a fanciful almost feeling to them, almost that they're parables, that they're metaphors. I
They
don't
are.
Right? I don't understand Japanese culture well. I know there are people who adore it, and when they were, I don't know, 19, they went to Japan and never came back, kind of thing.
Mhm.
I'm much more sort of European drawn as a person to the place, to the food, to the culture, to the people, and to the literature. But do you think that there's something about the Japanese that cats feed some part of their soul in a different way? They have islands of cats. They have
Yes.
marketplaces full of cat themed stuff, just
Yeah.
masses of it. Do you think, what is that?
I don't know. I've never been to Japan. I've never been to any of the Asian countries. I would love to go one day, but you're right. Just something about cats just goes deep back into their culture, into their history, and they're drawn to it. They really love it. And I think they do a great service to cats and their history in their writing.
I agree because they treat them as not sacred is too strong a word, but revered
Revered, yes.
creatures. And then in the novels, variety of different novels, which you guys have to listen to Cat Chat to hear us talk about it. And we might not both agree on a book. We might not both agree that we like it very much, but we want other people to know about it. It is a look into another culture. And because if you think of Isabel Allende or any of the fantastical writers from Central America, South America, that's an idea that's unusual for us. I think Americans are very literal. And even the
Yes.
British are quite literal. But if you look at that kind of fantastical writing, once people were aware, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the writers that brought that kind of otherworldliness to fiction, once people got a taste of it, they wanted it. They wanted
Yes.
more of it. I
Yes.
don't know. Do you think sort of Kurt Vonnegut falls in? Names are just popping in my head. Do you think Kurt Vonnegut kind of falls into that category as an American
Oh,
writer, writing
possibly.
inventive, crazy, believable but unbelievable.
Fantasy itself as a genre is so popular right now. It's just so huge that I think any kind of a an off take on it, like the cat fantasy, I think is going to find its audience.
Especially with cat lovers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what would be your wish for the next generation? Would it be to buy more books, read more books? That seems to be a lot of it. It's not hard to get kids to love cats or want cats.
Right.
But
We
what
just
about
want
books?
I want to get books into the hands of as many of our community members and beyond as possible. The more books in their hands, the better. The more literature, the more cultural experiences that they can have. Like you said, we are a low socioeconomic community, and a lot of these kids and adults will never leave Pittsburgh. I want them to be able to visit other worlds if they don't physically leave Pittsburgh.
That's just a great way of putting it. When you were teaching ESL, was it mostly to Spanish speaking children, or
Yes.
is
Had
that
a,
the
had a
main?
large family of Guatemalan students.
Oh, we won't discuss what their lives are like now. We can't
Yeah,
discuss politics. It's all too unbearable. But a lot of Guatemalans, how did they wind up coming to Pittsburgh, Kansas? Some family members came and others joined them.
that was exactly it. As best I could tell, I would always ask, "How did you end up here?" And it was always a family member. A family member found their way here somehow, and I could never get to the root. Like there must have been one particular family member that found it for some reason, and then they all came because they just needed to escape just the terror and the horror that they were living in at home.
Absolutely. And if we look at our history, our very short history of our very young country, there are pockets of nationalities around this country that were the same thing. One person from Ireland, one person from Sweden or Norway came over, or Italian for sure,
Mhm.
and the Basque people came over. One person would come and make their way, and then they'd send for the wife or the children or the brother.
Right,
And they wanted to have a community in which their culture, where they had a comfort zone and also a temporary bed, at least in the beginning, perhaps
right.
some help getting employment. So it's definitely how America has always worked.
Yep.
And it's interesting that in a place that you wouldn't know how did, like you said, who was the first one? Didn't the Mormons get started by one man goes out in the desert kind of thing to Utah?
Yeah,
Come on, y'all, come
yeah,
follow me. It's the same kind of idea. And whether it's escaping war and that kind of terror or famine or just economic issues in the country that they live in,
right.
was for the Irish. And aren't there parts of Minnesota or some northern place that are just like some northern place in Northern Europe because it's full of people
Oh,
from
I'm sure. Yeah,
way or someplace. Everyone that lives there is like, Tracie, why don't you know this? I just know that there are cultures that have come here and created a subculture, which is
right,
part of what makes America interesting and strong. And in terms of people that come without the English language, like people from Central and South America and
right,
Mexico, they really want English because they want to not necessarily assimilate, but they want to function. They want to be
right.
functioning. And books really help with that,
Absolutely, absolutely.
connect them to American ideas and characters, and make them feel part of something. If they can say, "Oh, I read that book," or "My child read that book," even "Good Night Moon," not many words, but something which is culturally connecting, something that a bookstore can really do.
We've had mothers, especially mothers and children, and entire families come in and thank us for having such a large and diverse children's section. And when all of the, like you said, we won't talk politics, but when all of the political uproar began a few months ago, we had informational pamphlets and things for them set up at the very front of the store so that they, along with a couple of books, so that they could see them when they walked in. More than one family thanked us for that.
Nice. We all need to support each other. Really important. And communities are the way to do that. And once you are, and a bookstore can be like a church or like a food pantry, can be a central place where people come together and care about each other. So
Absolutely.
I want to thank you for creating that with the Literary Cat Company Bookstore and Cat Lounge. And I hope all seven of those kitties that are the non-permanent residents go right out the door with the help of Cadet and Creamy, and another bunch come in and make
Yeah.
it a whole new day for you each time.
That's what it's
Thank
all about.
It sure is. Jennifer Mowdy, thank you so much for your courage and your vision. And
Thank
congratulations on the success you've had. And I look forward to talking to you on Cat Chat about a lot of these very curious cat books. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
ma'am. Thank you.